Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show. We've got an important update on the trade market. The Markkanen situation resolved. Does that open things up around the rest of the NBA? We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Jeremy Grant, his situation with Portland. We'll talk a bit about the Olympics, a Brandon Ingram rumor. A lot of stuff to get into. I'm Trevor Lane. Fortunately, still here. Hold it on. It's my guy, Keith Smith. Keith, how are you holding up? I know it's been a tough time in Florida. You had the storm, and now you are not quite 100% here.
Yeah, thankfully the storm stayed well off the coast for us. It hit up in the Big Bend, which is like the panhandle where it turns, like it hit up in there. But we got like these killer outer bands. This was a huge storm size wise, and we no damage, thankfully, but we had a bunch of branches down, and I was trying to take care of some of that and tweaked my back a little bit, but we're all good. We're gonna power through. It's not bad. Now you could see a glimpse of the heating pad in the recliner behind me, and I'll get back over there as soon as we're done.
All right. Well, we won't keep you any longer than we have to then, so you can get back to mending your back. But let's start here. Lauri Markkanen. This is what we've been waiting for. He is going to stay with the Jazz. He will sign that extension. It's I believe, a renegotiate and extend is ultimately what he'll do there. Now, it's not going to happen today though. It's going to happen tomorrow or at the earliest. And the reason for that is that will make it so he will not be trade eligible this season. So that's it. We're not going to have a Lauri Markkanen trade this summer. We won't have one this season. Keith, was this the right decision, I guess, first and foremost, for the Utah Jazz?
I think so, because I'm guessing it sounds like the closest they got was with Golden State, and that wasn't very close at all.
I was surprised by how bad that offer was.
Yeah, and that came from Anthony Slater, who's really good on Warriors stuff. Well, let me rephrase. It was in the report that Anthony Slater contributed to, so I'm gonna guess it came from him because he's all over Warriors stuff. And what was it? It was an offer based around Moody and a bunch of picks.
Moody, a couple of firsts, a couple of seconds, and like a pick swap or something like that.
Yeah, and there would have had to probably have been like Andrew Wiggins in there for salary matching purposes, just to make the math work. But not a great offer, right? So I think I think if you're the Jazz, this is the right move. Extend him, keep him all year. And we're going to get into another topic because there's still thoughts out there that the Jazz may still load up and try to be a good competitive team this year. And if they don't go that direction, well, you know what? You can still be probably pretty bad with Lauri Markkanen on the team. You're either going to sit him when you need to and do what you've done the last couple of years, but then you're rebuilding around high draft picks and a really good player already in place. Yes, he's a little older. He's not like a 20-year-old franchise player, but it's not like he's also 32 or anything like that. So
exactly.
I think this is the right move for the Jazz. If the right offers weren't there, they took it as long as they could. Now, not going to be traded this year. Renegotiate and extend him, keep him around, make him happy, and go forward. What I'm interested to see now is, do they renegotiate him all the way up to his max? That's what I assume will happen. Then does he get a max tacked onto that? Or does this turn into a situation where it is they lessen the out years after
like a Miles Turner deal? Exactly.
Yeah. So we'll see, because I don't know that I'm sold that Lauri Markkanen is a full max player. Sure. I get this year, because why not, right? You got to use that cap space anyway. You might as well. I have no issue with that part of it. It's the outer years where I'm not fully sold. He's like a 30% max guy, but if you could get him for like 25% of the cap, or a little less, or 30% even in the outer years or something like that, sure, why not? That'd be pretty solid work.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. Again, the Miles Turner situation being a great example, where you can take a guy, maybe you overpay him a little bit. And I agree with you that I don't think I think he's incredibly talented. I think he's a very, very good player. But I agree, he may not be a max, especially under the new CBA. Teams aren't handing out max contracts like Oprah anymore. But under the new CBA, I could see where you could have the incentive to say, hey, we're going to give you this max this year, and then we're going to decline that contract after that. So that's going to give us more flexibility into the future, which is what essentially, I mean, the Pacers gave, I don't recall if it was a full max for Turner, but they gave him a big bump the first year, and then it actually declined after that. That would make a lot of sense to go that route with Markkanen for the Jazz. And as we said at the outset of this was a no-lose situation for Utah. You're either three things are going to happen. You're either going to keep Markkanen and he won't be trade eligible all season, and you're going to have a good young player on your roster. You're going to keep Markkanen and he will be trade eligible, and then you can talk trades, throughout the year and see what comes up, but he's still on your roster and you've got control there. Or number three, you trade him and you get a haul. And if that haul isn't there, again, you go to option one or option two, and it's still a positive. So the Jazz were in a great situation here. If that was the best offer, what the Warriors threw out there, I don't blame Utah at all for saying, no, thanks. We'll hang on to him. He likes it here. We're going to move forward. Now, the question, though, becomes, because Markkanen would like to win, and this now opens up the wing market. All the other guys behind him, Brandon Ingram, Jeremy Grant, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Kyle Kuzma. Now we turn our attention to them because teams will now start to focus on those players. And now there's already some buzz that the Jazz could be a landing spot for Brandon Ingram. So first of all, do you like that idea of the Jazz saying, well, if we're keeping Lauri, let's go get somebody to help him?
Yeah, and let's be clear just on the Jazz part of this. Even if they bring Markkanen up to his max this year, which is about $42 million, they'll still have almost $11 million in cap space left over after doing that. I've said it before in this show. I'll say it again. $11 million in cap space plus John Collins. Go get Brandon Ingram. I think that's a pretty solid deal for both sides. I think Collins could really fit well with Zion Williamson. Is he an ideal center fit? No, he's not ideal, but pretty solid. I think he would do a pretty solid job there for them. And if they have somebody else who's ready, he's only got 1 year left, assuming he picks up that player option anyway. And you could pivot in a different direction at that point if Yves Missy proves ready, or Daniel Tice is more ready to go. That's the direction I would go. I'm sure they would maybe prefer Walker Kessler instead, and maybe other stuff to get there, but matching wise, that leftover cap space plus Collins works pretty good to get you Brandon Ingram. But yeah, on the Utah side, no issue. The one place they don't really have another really good player, because Markkanen, you can play him on the wing, but you can very easily also say, all right, he's our 4. And you could then slide Ingram in at your 3 spot and probably be a pretty decent team. You at least have the bones of a pretty good team there. And let's say you hit the trade deadline and you're playing pretty well. Let's say you're in like the 6, 7, 8 range. Then you want to push up. Well, you've got a bunch of draft picks. You've got a bunch of kids. Go out and trade for another veteran player and go. What Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck have done is they've given the Jazz all kinds of optionality here. And if Ingram is just at the cost of, hey, we're going to use the rest of our cap space and maybe get off a contract that we don't necessarily love having on the books, go for it. Do that, because then that puts you in a spot where a year from now, you're pretty well set up and you can then wipe Ingram off the books if it doesn't work out, or retrade him later this season or something like that. So you're kind of, in a lot of ways, you're kicking those options cans down the road a little bit. You kick the Markkanen one way down the road, because now we're talking next summer before you can trade him, if that's the direction you wanted to go. But an Ingram trade, that only kicks it down the road, maybe a few months down the line. So yeah, I think that could be a thing we could see.
I'm from a Lakers perspective, selfishly, I don't want to see this happen, because I could see a scenario here, Keith, where both the Pelicans and the Jazz get better by trading with each other, with Ingram going to Utah. And if you can work Walker Kessler into a package to the Pelicans, that solves an issue for them. And then there's other pieces obviously will be coming back. Like if it's like somehow there's a Colin Sexton and Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler move that those two
which
land
also
and
get you there. Yep.
Which could also get you there. Like I think you could make the argument that the Pelicans can improve and the Jazz could improve, and you could have. I mean, the Jazz right now are seen as a fringe play-in-ish team in the Western Conference. I think they could actually take a step forward, and I think that the Pelicans could take a step forward as well and maybe solidify themselves as a playoff squad. So that in an already crowded West, I'm kind of hoping it doesn't happen, but it does make a lot of sense to me for both sides, Keith, for those two to explore something.
Sure. I mean, and that would leave you really with just Portland as the only team that you're going into the season saying, all right, they're probably not going to be very good. And there's a world where Scoot Henderson comes back better, Shaden Sharp comes back better, and just they find the right mix of guys. I don't think it's going to happen, but there is a world where that happens too, because San Antonio would be the only other team that I think we'd be counting on as not being very good. And Wemby may lift them all by himself almost with Chris Paul and Brandon, Harrison Barnes. I wanted to say Brandon Ingram, and then people went, wait, what? Harrison Barnes, just two veteran guys there to help their young roster along a little bit. And all of a sudden, then the Spurs are into it, right? So that could be a whole thing where all of a sudden we're in a spot where, oh my gosh, we don't have any teams we can count out. Now, somebody will end up bad. Somebody we think that is good will have an awful year, kind of like Memphis had last year. It happens every year. That's going to be somebody. But yeah, for you being pretty reasonable about where the Lakers are, probably in that range of fighting, let's say 5 through 12 in the West, in that bucket of teams, maybe even a little under that, could be maybe 6 to 10 range or something like that. Yeah, I wouldn't want to introduce another team or two into that mix either, right? Because now you're in a spot where it's like, all right, how do we, figure this out? Like, and then that becomes one of those, we talked about it all last season. You have a bad week or two, and now the next thing you know, you're 5 games back because you had one bad week of four game losing streak or something, and now your season's a mess.
And that's exactly what happened to the Lakers after the in-season tournament last year. They had a bad 3 weeks where they went 3-13 or something, and that was it.
Yep.
That was
it.
Never
that was really recovered.
Yeah. I mean, they battled their way back, but my God, sure. I mean, there was that. I mean, Lakers fans know well, and I'm not going to turn this into a Lakers show or anything, but there was a period where they kept winning and winning and winning and winning, and they couldn't get out of ninth because everybody around them kept winning in the Western Conferences. So that's going to be. The margin for error is going to be so small. But again, if Utah and the Pels, they see an opportunity here, I think it makes a lot of sense for them to explore it. But that brings us to, they're not going to be the only team. It's not going to be Utah and the Pelicans, the only team potentially looking to improve. Like I said, now perhaps the market opens up a bit for the non-Markkanen. The Markkanet opens up a bit. The non-Markkanen wings out there. But we did get a bit of news over the weekend. Jeremy Grant would like to stay in Portland. Do you buy this? Do you think this is what Jeremy Grant actually wants? Or do you think this is, just him kind of making, because I think it's more likely than not that he winds up staying in Portland. Certainly trades are never a likely thing to expect. So is this just him kind of covering his bases? How do you see this?
Yeah, this came from Jake Fisher. It was kind of part of the whole thing. He was on the market and stuff yesterday. I think it was, or it might have been Sunday. All the days have run together now, but it was
days have no meaning anymore.
Right. Yeah. So it was something along the lines of, I think there was all in one piece where he's kind of talking about just the trade market in general. And one of the things he mentioned is Jeremy Grant doesn't really want to move on from Portland. And he basically said Grant has bounced around a lot in his career and is pretty happy in Portland. And a big part of why he signed that long-term contract was to stay in Portland because that's where he wanted to be, wanted to settle. Portland is a place, we talked about this with Utah. Portland is another one of those cities where I think sometimes it gets overlooked how much players like being there. Damian Lillard has talked about he's never not going to live in Portland. He lives in Milwaukee right now in season, but when the season's over, he was right back to Portland. He loves it there. And a lot of other guys over the years have talked about their affinity for Portland after they've been there for a while. So I think we're in a spot with Jeremy Grant where I'm sure he doesn't want to uproot his entire life here roughly 2 months ahead of training camp or in season. Yeah. Now, I would say with Jeremy Grant, you've got an awful lot of money coming your way, my guy, like 120 million or so, or whatever it is. If the team wants you somewhere else and can make the right move for you, that's just going to be kind of how it goes, right? It is what it is. So but yeah, I mean, I get it. And if that is the case, and Portland said to be asking a pretty high price for him, maybe we don't see a Jeremy Grant move coming yet. that may be one that takes a little while longer to come together.
Yeah, it may indeed, especially again, if that asking price is high. I would imagine most teams around the NBA still see his contract as a bad one. So that's going to be something to factor in here too. Whether or not Portland agrees with that may ultimately determine what the asking price is, and whether or not a deal gets done. But again, there's going to be some other wings, I think, over the next. I mean, it could be a few days, it could be a week, could be longer. This time of year, without this, we're not like on the cusp of the season starting, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Which means that urgency isn't always baked in this time of year. It's not quite there. That will pick up as we get into September. But so we can't say it's like suddenly the floodgates are opening and we're going to see all these trades go down. But I do think that now that the Markkanen decision, now that that's off the board, now it's when we're going to see the other dominoes start to fall one way or another. We're just going to get certainty with them, where it could be they wind up staying with their incumbent teams, but we could also potentially see some moves pop up here. Would be nice to get some August moves. And I know that's a little bit of Lakers bias coming in here, but still it would be nice to see something in August happen in the NBA news cycle.
It would be nice if something happened and it wasn't just you and I like it was last summer sitting here giving Damian Lillard updates so long that we had to create
Dames of our lives.
Dames of our lives update, runner before we actually gave the reports. Because I'm with you. I think it would be interesting to see. So let's run. I know you kind of ran through them once already, but if we just kind of go through them again, we've got Kyle Kuzma out there, Jeremy Grant. Who else am I missing? I know obviously
Jeremy Grant, Brandon Ingram, Cam Johnson, and Dorian Finney-Smith are kind of probably the big five right there.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? The Nets are still obviously in the process of rebuilding their stuff and trying to get everything settled. We've got very much then Johnson and Finney-Smith. A lot of people expect Finney-Smith could go. I'll throw it's not a straight trade. But Isaac Okoro's situation is still unresolved as a restricted free agent, so we could see a sign and trade come into play there with Cleveland sends him out somewhere. Something that's important to keep an eye on here that I'll say puts a little bit of a deadline on this, not a big one, but a little bit of one, which is still roughly 2.5 months away because we're about 2.5 months from opening day or opening night. That's right at the end of the. Right at the beginning of the season, that's when any of the teams under the floor get that cap hole put on. As of today, that is only Utah. Right now, Utah won't be there once they do Markkanen. But Utah's, like I said, got about 10, 11 million left in cap space. Detroit has 10 or 11 million left in cap space. The other easier part to make a trade, because some of these guys we talked about, they're carrying $25, $30 million plus salaries. It's easier to make those trades when you have the additional roster spots because a lot of times that means trade is unbalanced. You're taking in 3 or 4 for 1 in those kind of trades. You have 21 roster spots in the offseason. 3 of those go away when we get into the regular season, and that can make it just a little more difficult because you don't necessarily want to be like, all right, well, we're going to waive 4 guys to make this trade. You want to be in a spot where it is, let's make this trade a little easier. So not a real hard deadline, but and then we also know coaches, everybody, they don't like a Damian Lillard trade going down on the eve of training camp. They want to be able to
plans already.
Exactly. They want to be able to map out, plan their stuff, get their install schedule set for their offense and defensive schemes, and know, all right, well, we've got these guys and we're going to build that out. They don't want this hanging over them. So let's call it roughly a month and a half-ish is when we'll say, all right, if we haven't seen something, we maybe won't, but like you said, it is kind of great that we still have kind of 5 big names still kind of out there very much in play.
Yeah.
And those are guys that can all, I'm not going to say swing the title race, but definitely swing playoff spots.
For sure. All right, let's finish up with this. The Olympics. So as we're recording this, I don't know if this will be published before the game starts or not, but as we're recording this, we are about an hour away from Team USA taking on Brazil. We saw France, Germany, and Serbia punch their ticket to the semifinals. The U.S., should they beat Brazil, would take on Serbia in the semifinal on their side of the bracket. Here we are. The Olympics have flown by. We've talked about it. It's been nice to see NBA players in action this time of year, giving us some more basketball to sink our teeth into. But Keith, given that the Final Four, should U.S. beat Brazil, would be U.S., Serbia, Germany, and France, how do you feel about the U.S.'s chances?
Yeah, we've already seen, if anybody's wondering like why I keep turning my head, the US women's soccer team is playing right now, and it's in extra time with a couple minutes left, and they're up 1-0. So I want to see if they can close that out and punch their ticket through to the gold medal game. Yeah, so we've already seen they've beaten Serbia, beat them in group play pretty handily. So that's something, right, that we're going to be kind of, let's see. It's always hard to beat a team twice in the same competition.
Sure.
So that can always be a challenge. Germany beat them last year at the World Cup. That's on the other side of the bracket. In France, I'm just going to call it what it is, in my opinion. They've gotten some home cooking the last couple of games here, to kind of help them through. So we'll see. But I'll say this overall. Today's 3 games were all really good. The Germany-Greece game, I was up this morning to watch it. Greece had a big lead early. Then Germany just kind of kept chipping away. And then they kind of turned it around and ran away with a little bit at the end. Then you had the Serbia, who now I'm losing my mind. Serbia-Australia game.
Australia. Yeah.
That was awesome. What a great game that was. Just really back and forth. Jokic made some big plays at the end, really to help Serbia along. And then you had the Canada-France game. France was killing them most of the game, and Canada made a run, but Canada couldn't get over the top. And where somewhat because of the Raptors, but mostly because of this age of Canadian players, there's a lot of Canadian fans. I know you and I interact with a lot of them on Twitter and through social media. A lot
Luca
of them
Rosano
watch
for
show.
Raptors Nation.
Yeah, absolutely. Just brutal for them. Like, they're so upset because they're like, this was supposed to be our year to finally break through in the Olympics, and that's it. It's done, because there's no, unlike the World Cup where you play for place 50, it feels like that's it. Once you're out in the Olympics, you're out, other than the semifinal. When you get into the semifinal, that turns into a little bit of a different situation. So that's where you get into a spot where it becomes a little bit of a different spot of, all right, they play the bronze medal game. So we'll see. But that was a very long answer to your question. I feel very good about Team USA. I felt very good about them all the way through. No reason to think they shouldn't win. I do think they have to be really cautious against Serbia because they played even with Jokic in the game, and Jokic will probably play. I'm not going to say he plays the full 40, but he's probably going to play 35, 36, 38 minutes. Probably be very brief rest for him. And then, see if he can alone kind of keep them in the game. So they're going to have their hands full.
That's where, if Joel Embiid is going to step up at any point for the U.S. team, it's in that game against Serbia that you're going to need him just as a big. He's just a little bit bigger than Anthony Davis, a little bit bigger than Bam Adebayo, both of which have outperformed Joel Embiid, no question, so far in this Olympic cycle. But I think they're going to need Embiid's size against Jokic, and hopefully he can step it up for at least that outing. Again, they've got Brazil today in an hour here, so we'll see if the U.S., of course, can advance. But right now, they are a heavy favorite. Last I looked, they were like a 26-point favorite. So hopefully the U.S. takes care of business against Brazil, and then we can set up that big semifinal matchup with Serbia, which would happen on Thursday. I can't believe it. It would be Thursday and then Saturday, and then that's it. That'd be
we're done.
For the U.S.
That'll be it for
basketball in the Olympics.
For men's basketball for a while here, at least until we get in. I think the next important men's game we'll see will be Celtics Nuggets in the preseason in Dubai. Just to give people
rising as you say that, Keith.
Just to give people a little bit of a sense on this Brazilian team, names people will probably recognize. Bruno Caboclo has played well throughout the course of this tournament. Raul Neto is there. He'd been an NBA guard for a long time. Gui Santos plays for the Warriors. Marcelino Huertas, he played in the NBA for a little while. Didu Lozada. Yep. Didi Luzada, NBA guy. I think Cristiano Felicio, longtime NBA guy too. So, we'll see. I think George DePaula had a cup of coffee in the NBA, if I remember right, as well. So, so they not exactly the Brazil teams of the past,
Sure.
but not a team the U.S. can't. Nobody anymore can you just show up and you're going to expect a blow them out in the Olympics. It just doesn't work like that anymore. You actually have to play the games, and U.S. women are through to the
there you
gold
go.
medal game. So
we're
steaming along here. It's been a pretty good day.
I love it. I love it. Let's hope the U.S. men can follow suit and get the job done against Brazil. But thank you, everybody, for joining the show. We appreciate all of you. Make sure you do subscribe to the channel. Turn on those notifications as well. Follow us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.